Vinegar and old newspaper will clean a window streak-free in half the time it takes with any spray bottle bought from a shop. Salt thrown straight onto a fresh wine spill will lift it from a carpet before it ever sets into a stain. I did not read this in a book. I watched my grandfather do it in our kitchen in the Yorkshire Dales more winters ago than I care to count. My name is Arthur Whitfield, and I grew up in a stone cottage where hot water was heated on the range, and every cleaning product in the house came from a cupboard, a field, or a hedgerow. My grandfather did not own a single bottle of anything with a brand name on it. He cleaned windows with vinegar and paper. He scrubbed pans with wood ash. He kept moths from the wool with dried lavender tied in muslin. And he never once complained that the house was less clean for it. These were not old wives' tales passed down for fun. They were daily practice, tested through hard winters and harder years. And I watched them work with my own eyes from the time I was old enough to hold a rag. I am sharing them now because fewer and fewer people still know them, and that is not by accident. Somewhere along the way, cleaning became complicated. It became a shelf of bottles, each one for a single job, each one costing more than the last, when a tin of bicarbonate of soda and a bottle of vinegar from the corner shop could do the work of half of them combined. The companies that sell those bottles are not in the business of telling you that salt and vinegar will do the job just as well for a fraction of the cost. That is simply not how they make their money. I am not here to tell you they are wicked people. I am only here to tell you what my grandfather taught me and let you decide for yourself, which is worth more, the convenience of a labeled bottle or the money left in your pocket at the end of the month. What you are about to hear is not a theory dreamed up for a video. These methods were used in households across England for generations, through wars, through rationing, through years when there was simply no money for anything else. They worked then because people had no other choice, and they still work now, whether you have a choice or not. Let me start with the first method, because it is the one my grandmother used more than any other in her kitchen. White vinegar and old newspaper will clean glass better than almost anything you can buy today. You mix 1 part white vinegar to 4 parts warm water in a jug. You dip a sheet of old newspaper into it, and you wipe the window in small circles before finishing with dry paper in straight lines from top to bottom. The ink in old newsprint has a slight abrasive quality that a soft cloth does not, and it leaves glass without the streaks that come from cloth fibers or paper towel lint. My grandmother used this on every window in the house every spring, and on the mirror in the hallway every single week, because a clean mirror in a dark hallway was, in her words, the first thing a visitor noticed. That is only the first method, and it is one of the simplest. The second is where most people are genuinely surprised, because it involves something that sits in almost every kitchen cupboard already. Salt, plain ordinary table salt, was one of the most useful cleaning tools in a Yorkshire household, and it still is. If wine or fruit juice spills on a carpet or a tablecloth, salt poured directly onto the wet patch while it is still fresh will draw the liquid up out of the fibers before it has a chance to set. You leave it for 10 to 15 minutes, then you vacuum or brush it away, and in most cases the stain lifts with it. Salt was also used to scour the inside of a scorched pan, mixed with a little cold cooking fat to loosen burnt food without scratching the metal the way a wire brush would, and a handful of salt thrown onto a coal fire that had begun to smoke too much wood. Settle the ash and clear the smoke in a matter of minutes, something my grandfather did without a second thought every time the chimney needed a little help drawing properly. Keep that one in mind, because fireplaces come up again a little later, and it is one of the more important pieces of this whole script. The third method concerns bicarbonate of soda, which in my grandmother's day was simply called baking soda, and was bought in a paper packet from the grocer for almost nothing. A few spoonfuls sprinkled onto a damp carpet, left overnight, and then vacuumed up in the morning will lift odors from a room far more thoroughly than any spray marketed for the same purpose today. Mixed into a paste with a small amount of water, it will scrub a bathtub, a sink, or the inside of an oven without scratching enamel. Because the crystals are soft enough to clean without damaging the surface underneath, my grandmother kept a tin of it on the shelf above the stove at all times, right next to the salt, and between the two of them there was very little in that kitchen that ever stayed dirty for long. She also used it in the laundry, half a cup added to the wash alongside the soap, which she said kept whites whiter and helped the soap work harder in the hard water we had running through the pipes in that part of Yorkshire. The fourth method uses something that grows in nearly every garden or can be bought cheaply at any market, and that is the humble lemon. Half a lemon dipped in salt was rubbed directly onto brass door handles, copper pans, and kettle spouts to remove tarnish and built-up limescale. And the acid in the fruit did the work that a bought metal polish does today, without the chemical smell that lingers in a room for hours afterward. A lemon boiled in a pan of water for 10 minutes will also lift baked-on grease and grime from the inside of that same pan, loosening it so it wipes away, with almost no scrubbing at all. And a kettle with limescale built up inside it, which was a constant problem in a house with hard water like ours, would be filled with equal parts water and vinegar, brought just to the boil, and left to sit for an hour before being rinsed thoroughly, and the limescale would come away almost entirely on its own. But that is only the first part of what I have for you today, because the second method involving vinegar is one that surprises almost everyone who hears it for the first time. The fifth method is one that most people today have never even considered, and it concerns wood ash from a coal or wood fire. Wood ash contains a natural alkaline compound, and when mixed with a small amount of water, it forms a mild soap that was used for generations to clean greasy pots, wash floors, and even scrub laundry in the years before shop-bought soap was affordable to every household. My grandfather kept a bucket of cooled ash by the back door, specifically for this purpose, and on wash day my grandmother would sieve a cupful of it into the copper boiler alongside the clothes, which cut through grease and grime on work clothes far better than plain water alone. It sounds unusual to modern ears, but the principle behind it is the same one used to make lye soap for centuries, and it cost nothing beyond the fire that was already burning to heat the house. The sixth method concerns beeswax, and this one was used almost exclusively for wooden furniture and floors, which in a stone cottage made up nearly every surface in the house. A small block of beeswax melted gently with a little turpentine or, in later years, a splash of vegetable oil made a polish that fed the wood rather than simply coating it the way modern spray polishes do. Rubbed in with a soft cloth and buffed to a shine with a second dry cloth, it left furniture with a deep, warm color that lasted for months rather than days, and it never left the sticky residue that builds up from repeated use of an aerosol polish. My grandfather's kitchen table, which is still in my possession today, has been polished with nothing but beeswax and elbow grease for over 60 years, and it has a shine to it that no bottle from a supermarket shelf has ever managed to match. Keep watching, because the seventh method is one that deals with something every household still struggles with today, and that is a blocked or slow-running drain. Washing soda, which is a stronger cousin of bicarbonate of soda, and was sold in blocks or crystals at the grocer, was the standard method for keeping drains clear in a Yorkshire home. A cup of washing soda poured down a sink, followed immediately by a kettle of boiling water, would dissolve grease and soap buildup inside the pipe, and doing this once a week kept a drain running freely without ever needing the harsh chemical cleaners sold for the same purpose today. For a drain that was already partly blocked, my grandfather would follow the washing soda with half a cup of vinegar, which caused a gentle fizzing reaction that helped break the blockage loose, then flush it through again with more boiling water. This was simple, it was cheap, and it worked without filling the house with the sharp chemical fumes that come from a bottle bought off a shelf today. The eighth method concerns steam, which is something people rarely think of as a cleaning tool at all, though it was one of the most versatile ones in the entire house. A kettle brought to the boil and held near a window, with the steam allowed to settle onto the glass for a minute or two, would loosen dried on dirt and grime enough that it wiped away with barely any pressure at all. The same steam, directed onto a wrinkled curtain or a jacket hung on the back of a door, would soften the fabric enough to smooth the wrinkles without ever needing an iron, saved both time and the cost of running one. My grandmother also used a damp cloth held over a boiling pan to steam clean the inside of the oven, softening burnt-on grease before she wiped it away, a method far gentler on the hands than any of the strong oven cleaners sold today. The ninth method deals with something every household with a carpet has faced at one time or another, which is the dent left behind by heavy furniture. An ice cube placed directly on a carpet dent left to melt slowly over an hour allows the fibers to absorb the water and swell back to their original height, after which a gentle brushing with the fingers restores the pile almost completely. For a grease stain on carpet or fabric, my grandmother used plain chalk rubbed directly onto the mark and left to sit overnight, because the chalk absorbed the oil from the fabric in the same way that modern stain-absorbing powders claim to do today, at a cost of almost nothing. This is the kind of method that never makes it onto a product label, because there is no product to sell. Only a piece of chalk that has sat in a drawer since the children last used it for a game outside. The 10th and final method concerns keeping the house free of moths and insects without a single can of spray, which was a genuine concern in a home built from stone and full of wool blankets, woolen coats, and dried food stores. Dried lavender, cedar shavings, and whole cloves tied together in small muslin bags were placed in wardrobes, drawers, and pantry shelves, and the natural oils in these plants deterred moths and pantry pests without any chemical scent at all. My grandmother replaced these little bags every few months, and in all my years growing up in that house, I never once saw a moth hole in a coat or a blanket that had been stored properly with them. It was a quiet, unremarkable habit, the kind that never draws attention to itself, and that is exactly why it has been so easily forgotten. When I think back on all of this now, what strikes me most is not how clever any single method was. It is how ordinary all of it was to the people who used it. My grandfather did not think of himself as resourceful or thrifty in any special way. He simply used what was in the house, what grew nearby, and what had been passed down to him by his own father before that. Somewhere between his generation and ours, we were taught to believe that cleaning required a shelf full of specialized products, each with its own label, its own scent, and its own price tag. I do not think that was ever true, and the more I look back on the years I spent in that kitchen, the more certain I become that it was never true at all. None of what I have shared with you today is complicated. None of it requires anything you cannot find in your own kitchen cupboard, your own garden, or the corner shop down the road. It simply requires knowing that it is possible, and knowing that it once was the ordinary way of doing things, not the unusual one. If this has been useful to you, there are more methods where this one came from. I share a new one every day, drawn from the same kitchen, the same cottage, and the same lessons my grandfather gave me all those years ago. The old ways are still here. You simply have to know where to look.